I was going to do my rant about root being a right and stuff today, so you'd all be fired up about how open computing mattered a lot. Because of our opportunity to get Alan out here after their earnings call, we decided to move that to yesterday. So if you can take yourselves back to that moment of passion where you felt like you were going to go out and start a revolution and buy the T-shirts that were in the lobby, and root being a right and open being important, I want to take you back to that moment. I know it was a wonderful moment. And then I want to bring you here today, and we're going to have a discussion about openness in clouds, because this is something we've heard a lot of today. I would say that we're in an era of open washing. We're done with the cloud washing, right? The number of brands that have the word open in them, it's like all the domains with the word cloud in them got used, so we decided we're going to put the word open in front of things now. Not that I'm being cynical or anything, but I do think that this move to openness is something that's got a lot of marketing buzz and is not necessarily well defined. And there's a lot of contradictory definitions of what it means to be open and why that's important. So I'm going to ask three people. We're lucky enough to have three heavyweights from different companies who are behind much of this open cloud movement to come out and talk about what it means to be open and how to fight the war on general purpose computing. Joining us today are going to be Brian Shih from Rackspace, Sameer Dholakia from Citrix, and John Gates from Enstratus to talk about the other war on general purpose computing. Gentlemen, if you want to come out and join me out here. And we're going to spend a little time talking about what it means to move to open and how you avoid getting locked into systems with openness and so on. So I'm going to ask each of you a really simple question in a Twitter-length response. That's 140 characters or less, depending on whether you want to include a hashtag. How do you define open? Go ahead, you're first.
So open is really about providing you the type of control that you need in your infrastructure. You have the ability to choose whatever technologies that you want as you build your cloud.
All right.
I think it's cloud on your terms, anywhere you want to put it and with any service provider.
So you would say it's choice. You're leaning a little towards portability?
Flexibility in deployment models and portability and compatibility as well.
Okay, and Sameer?
We focus, it's all about collaboration. It's the opposite of control. It's in our world, in our worldview, the opposite of VMware's approach. It's about collaborating.
That is a very, very short answer.
How's that? How's that?
That's not just Twitter length. That's, yeah.
I'm picking up where my friend Simon Crosby left off.
That's hashtag length. That's nice. So maybe each of you wants to talk for a couple of minutes about what you see as your open initiative. Maybe give a bit of background of who you are and what you see as the role of your organization in championing open clouds. Start with you this time, Sameer.
Sure. My name is Sameer Dholakia. I'm the GM of our Cloud Platforms group at Citrix. That group includes our Zen Server product line, our Cloud Stack, cloud orchestration layer, our Cloud Portal, which helps you build a cloud on top, and then the group that focuses on delivering desktop as a service, which is core to the Citrix business value proposition. We are deeply, deeply engaged in helping organizations build open clouds. Alan, timely talk, has built zCloud on top of a number of technology components, of course, but core among them are Cloud Stack and Zen Server. That is a very significant environment, as he described. Many, many thousands of nodes of servers using our open source-based software, Cloud Stack and Zen Server. And so we're very aggressively pursuing what we believe is the battle for cloud computing, and that war in our mind is very much about open versus proprietary. We are very committed to driving success in the open world, and our singular belief, and I say this often, if VMware is as successful with vCloud in the service provider community as they have been with vSphere in the enterprise data centers, we will have all just watched the birth of the next great monopoly that will extract rents for the next decade. And I believe that is not only not only bad for Citrix, but for the industry and customers. And so we believe it's very important that the collaboration, that the group of folks like us get together so that open source wins in the cloud and not closed.
All right, John.
Yeah, so I'm John Gates. I'm the CTO at Rackspace, and obviously I sort of represent Rackspace and Rackspace Public Cloud, but I also spend a lot of time talking about OpenStack. OpenStack is an open source project that provides the ability for companies, users, to build their own cloud based on open source technology. There's a cloud storage component that Rackspace contributed in our early days, and then NASA came along and joined forces with us, and they contributed a big compute component. So it provides the foundation for infrastructure as a service clouds. There's a number of projects that sort of coexist within those within the project to sort of complement the storage and compute. But to give you sort of the idea that it's really the way that you could build a Rackspace cloud or an Amazon-style cloud in your own data center. That could be a public cloud. We have competitors actually now using OpenStack to build their own public clouds. Quite a number of companies have announced. A lot of companies here at this conference are talking about OpenStack clouds. Rackspace has services around OpenStack to where we can provide, again, managed services on top of that cloud so customers don't have to manage it themselves. And so open for me is really, again, flexibility to deploy on your terms, on your hardware, using your own choice of hypervisor, giving you really the choice and flexibility, and then interoperability between Rackspace and other cloud providers.
All right.
Hello, my name is Brian Shea, and I'm responsible for our enterprise cloud business at Red Hat. So that includes everything from our CloudForms infrastructure as a service offering to OpenShift, which is our platform as a service offering, our management portfolio, our security products, and so on. From a Red Hat perspective, open and building an open cloud is really the most important architectural approach that you can take as you consider how are you going to get the full benefits of a cloud. If you take a look at a lot of the challenges that enterprises have in their own data centers today, a lot of different management silos, a lot of complexity, how are they going to get the types of efficiencies that people like Rackspace and other public cloud providers can have? It's only by getting to the benefits of cloud, but you need an open cloud architecture that encompasses everything that you're doing. If your cloud only works on a narrow set of your infrastructure, if you have to put it in there and it doesn't deal with your existing applications and so on, then having a cloud is not going to provide you with the full benefits. You're not going to get all this agility and cost savings that you're looking for if your cloud is not open and able to extend to the types of workloads that you want. Another really important factor is that as you take a look at what it means to be open, there's a lot of really key properties, and these properties are important measurements of what it means to be open. This includes factors like, is there a community? Are there open standards? Do you have freedom around IP and so on? And so as you take a look at all these different characteristics of what it means to be open, this serves as a really good litmus test of how open are you and what benefits can you really achieve.
All right. So we've heard open's good. There's a paradox here. Limiting choices and forcing people onto a smaller number of possible platforms, which is unopen, right? Taking away their options, not letting them do what they want, not letting them go underneath the covers, forcing them to work at a higher level. And you can argue that that's not a bad definition of closed, or that is a bad definition of closed. But if we limit people's choices, then we force them to become more homogeneous, which means we can optimize them. As you heard from Peter Magnuson earlier, if I build something on App Engine and I need document conversion, my document conversion is only one of millions of documents that Google is doing. And so I don't get to rewrite my own document conversion code, but for the same reason that we don't all get to build our own cars, because then we get to drive on consistent highways with consistent speed limits and have consistent crash tests. Openness tends to lead to sprawl in a way that can that can undermine the economies of scale cloud is supposed to bring. So there seems to be a bit of a paradox here that limiting choice is actually good for us in some cases because it gives us economies of scale. Discuss.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll take a first cut. I think one is the key is having openness at the core so that people can come in and collaborate and contribute and augment and have access to those things. I think that at that higher level of abstraction, part of the reason is it is about establishing standards and trying to get folks to build on a platform and trying to coalesce the industry around that. Citrix, as some people here may know, has been deeply engaged in the OpenStack community from the outset. We acquired Cloud.com with the CloudStack platform that is also 100% open source and has had a great deal of success. And we've been doing and will continue to do everything we can to try to bring together the tremendous traction and asset that we have with CloudStack and the community that's growing there with OpenStack. And our organization, Citrix, has talked with Rackspace quite a bit. We're willing to contribute CloudStack into the OpenStack community. So we're trying to do everything we can to keep it together so that it doesn't fracture, so that it doesn't split, because we do think that that is important to establishing a standard on which people can then go build higher up.
I think it's also a particular problem if you sort of define it the way you did, where you say it's one company sort of defining the standard and keeping it tight and locked in. I mean, you don't have any opportunity for innovation, and you don't have any opportunity for somebody to go in a completely different direction. If OpenStack, for instance, decided we're just going to copy the AWS APIs word for word, line for line, we would never be able to create anything beyond that. That we'd have to just wait for them to invent something and then copy it, and that's not really the way you want.
But we haven't really changed TCP/IP in a long time, and we got a lot of innovation on top of that. So didn't we do well by getting consolidation around a standard there?
Yeah, and I think that's what OpenStack represents is a very strong community around one mission, which is an open version of the cloud rather than something that is so tightly sort of controlled by one organization that that no one else can have a role to play. The ecosystem is important. If you think about all of the people that are represented out there in the floor of the show, a lot of those people's businesses are betting on being a part of a vibrant ecosystem, not being sort of left out of an ecosystem that is potentially undermining their whole business model.
So just to dig into that a little bit, at Rackspace, is your public cloud built on the same OpenStack infrastructure that people get in the private cloud, top to bottom?
Most of it is, and it will be completely by the end of this year.
So your goal is you can get it from us or someone else?
Yeah. In fact,
Just
we're
like
publishing our reference architecture.
Right.
It's called referencearchitecture.org. You can go look at it, and we're trying to be very transparent. We don't see that we get a competitive advantage by having something that no one else can have on a technology
Well, and
level.
this is Facebook opening up its data center plans and Netflix opening up stuff on GitHub every week. They publish something new.
We like that.
I'm going to shed what used to be a competitive advantage,
like
and I'm going
that.
to focus on higher level stuff.
We like that. We approve.
How do you feel about that? I mean,
I agree with that, and I really think it's a bit of a false dichotomy to say, your choice is either open or complexity. Because if you take a look at it, open is really about providing you the freedom to choose your architecture and flexibility going forward.
I think my point was open and complexity, or closed and simple.
Right, but even there, just because you have an open architecture doesn't mean you have to naturally introduce complexity into the environment. So the fact that I can choose many different options doesn't mean I have to, but I can bring in what I feel is the best set of technologies to address a lot of rapidly changing use cases. So for example, in the previous session, we heard about how Zynga adapted its different models where they started in their own data centers, they went out into Amazon, and then now they're doing reverse bursting. All these different patterns that you're looking at, because we're so in the early days of cloud, you don't want to trap yourself or lock yourself into one particular architecture that's imposed on you so that you don't have the ability to adapt and to be able to change as you go forward. So being open doesn't mean that my environment right now is complex, but I have the ability to change at will as I need to.
So I'm not sure I buy that. You say being open doesn't mean it's complex, but very few people I know have Linux as their home PC they watch TV on. I mean, a buddy of mine once tried to convince me to use Myth TV, and he was like, "Oh, it's easy. Look at these words going by." And I'm like, "I just want to watch a movie. Can't I just grab the remote?" And yes, I couldn't get root on that TV. It was a bad thing, but I just wanted to watch a movie.
So Red Hat's not in the consumer space, obviously, but certainly you may not be using Myth TV, but I bet if you surveyed the audience here and you asked them what operating system was running on their handsets, you'd find about half of them are using Linux and Android and so on. So certainly it can provide the foundation that you need in terms of
But
very valuable.
Linux that's rooted, or Linux and Android that's locked down by the carrier?
Well, so again,
'Cause I'll take that survey. We can turn the lights up, but I'm going to guess that most of them can't get root on their phone.
but again, the point is not that someone is going to go ahead and change the code in their cloud or going change around the source code. This is why Red Hat provides value to our customers. Customers come to us so that we can make the open source code consumable and packaged so that in the enterprise context, it's the equivalent of getting, not a Myth TV, but an actual TiVo
Sure.
type of experience. And having an open source is just one key element in terms of what makes an open architecture. If you want to be open, it's not just about the code, it's about having an open community. It's about being able to deploy on the infrastructure of your choice. It's about being able to have unencumbered access and freedom to the intellectual property. It's about having open APIs and so on. If you're not open across all these different dimensions, then just because your code happens to be open source, it's not going to provide you nearly enough benefits.
So let me ask you about stacks, right? We all love TCP, but I remember a day where I had to choose, was it Vines or DECnet or IPX SPX or TCP IP? And the brilliant Simon Ordley, who's talking later on today, pointed out that, look, it was a moot point because one of those stacks was public, TCP IP, and we all just eventually went there because nothing could fight with the de facto public standard. And first question, I guess, is are we in another stack war, only it's not the networking stack, now it's the cloud stack, and pun intended, and at some point we're just going to choose the public standard that's the de facto standard, and that's the way it's going to be? Or where are we in that battle? Is this like one of you use Vines and one of you use DECnet and one of you use IPX?
Well, I mean, I think that OpenStack, we would like it to be a broad enough standard that people sort of look at it and say, well, that's the way we ought to build clouds going forward. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I mean, you have today a number of ecosystems we talked about mobile phones. There's an Apple ecosystem that's very vibrant. There's an Android ecosystem. So maybe there's a couple, but there won't be dozens. There won't be multiple, multiple tens of ecosystems. There'll be a handful or less. And so I think that what we're going to see is that we want to have an ecosystem where we do have openness to at least collaborate on things. We have some consistency for people to be able to deploy a private cloud that works in their context the same way that a public cloud works in ours. And that only happens if we're collaborating in the open and talking about it. I mean, we have design summits every 6 months where we get together and we invite the community to come talk about what clouds ought to be. It's not Rackspace's vision for what a cloud ought to be. It's the community's vision for what a cloud ought to be.
Sure, and I'm being disingenuous by calling you guys that any one of you could be the TCP IP, and I think I'm a pretty big proponent of moving up the stack to things like Cloud Foundry and OpenShift. There's another battle happening right there between OpenShift and Cloud Foundry versus Zen and VMware.
Yep.
These battles are happening at different layers
At
of the
every
stack
layer of the
currently,
stack,
right?
yeah, sure.
One of the things that really bugs me is we talk a lot about cloud availability and performance, and we spend all our time talking about machines. And it seems to me that every big cloud problem I encounter is a data problem, not a machine problem. So like if someone said, make me a highly available email app, I'd stand up an email server in 50 cities. The problem is when I want to access an email and I accidentally edit it in 2 places at once, there's all these issues of concurrency and latency and so on that happen, right? So to me, open cloud computing is as much about open portable data and being able to get the metadata out of the cloud as it is about being able to run a machine image in a certain format that I can crack open and carry around. Tell me about the role of data in open clouds.
So I think that data, you're absolutely right, it's a hugely important factor of being open. I actually think it's more than just data. I think there's actually 4 different dimensions that you have to be open and portable around if you want to be open at all. And that's around computing, data and services, programming languages, and applications. So let me just run through that really briefly. Sure. From a computing standpoint, you've got to be open in terms of being able to access computing capacity at the provider of your choice. Your choice of physical infrastructure, your choice of virtualization technology, your choice of public cloud providers. But it's not good enough just to be able to say, I can run my application here, I can run my application there. To your point, what do I do with my data if I migrate my application? What do I do with my application dependencies if they don't exist everywhere that I want to run? If they only exist in one particular cloud, I'm locked into that cloud, even if I can spin up the VM somewhere else. From a programming standpoint, you mentioned platform as a service. You really have to be able to write your applications in the frameworks and the languages of your choice and to be able to deploy them into the cloud of your choice. If you can only use one framework and it only exists at one API, again, you're locked in, you're not open, you're not portable. And then finally, you really have to consider from an application standpoint. If I don't have any kind of automation, if I have to deal with provisioning and management in one way in one environment and a totally different set of tools in another environment, I'm never going to take advantage of openness because it's too cumbersome.
All right, John, Sumit, you got thoughts on data?
No, I was thinking back to revisiting that conversation around the stacks and the APIs and standardization, kind of all your questions kind of bundled up. I think one of the keys, I think, will be in a very open dialogue in the community around whether that is Amazon API, OpenStack API, and from a cloud, from our perspective at Citrix, CloudStack, for example, has a very high degree of fidelity with the Amazon API. It's simply because of just the mass and scale of the Amazon cloud and the ecosystem and workloads that have already been built around that. So now we have, I think there'll be a very interesting discussion for all of us over the next 12 and 24 months to see around building towards an API standard, whether there's a de facto standard of one that has grown to be $1 billion business and running away versus a community one that has been driven around OpenStack or others. And I think that will be an interesting discussion, and I think it touches on a lot of the different points you mentioned. We'll have to see how things play out.
So data, I think, is one of the things that actually holds people back from cloud adoption in a big way, because they sometimes feel like it's hard to get data up to the cloud. It's massive. It's a tough job, and they're also worried about getting data out of the cloud once they've put it there. I think there's a risk of closed proprietary platforms holding us back even more, because they become islands of data that really can't be, you're stranded. You've got data stranded there. The more you build to a proprietary key value store or some sort of big data architecture that isn't open, that it isn't portable, the more you're really locking yourself in for the long term.
So, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw it yesterday, but I'm a huge advocate of the open model. I'm just trying to be the jerk that.
No, I understand, yeah.
Because all three of you are going to agree, and an agreeing contest is really boring. But tell me what that looks like if I'm using your cloud. I mean, the example I heard yesterday, and admittedly, closed platform, but Amazon's Elastic Beanstalk's a great example of, hey, you can use this self-configuring Elastic platform, but there's a big red button over here, and if you push it, you're on your own. You can go get your machines, but we're not going to scale them anymore, like, caveat emptor. Tell me about what's going to happen to reconcile this very open, you can get root, do what you want model with the, hey, clouds are elastic and self-healing and automatic and efficient, and they make you quick. There's got to be a button in there that says, I give up the right to elasticity and automation in return for self-determination. What does that button look like in the future?
So I think one of the tensions that you're bringing up is the tension between people who want rapid access to capacity, what the cloud is really good at delivering, elasticity, self-service provisioning and so on. And you take a look at, what enterprises and people who are managing the cloud care about. How do I make sure that my environments are in compliance, that I've got standard operating environments, that I'm dealing with this kind of governance issue or that kind of regulation and this kind of policy and so on. And these are very much two issues that are in tension. And from a Red Hat perspective, one of the things that we focus very much on is how do we empower people so that as they start taking these capabilities around application lifecycle management, systems management concepts, and bring them into this new world of cloud so that you can get these kind of capabilities and the benefits that come from being open, but from an IT governance perspective, you also continue to retain control. How do I know who launched what applications into the cloud? How do I know what's going on with them? How do I know what patch level they're running at, and how do I manage that, and so on? These things also become very important.
Okay, guys, quickly, because we're
I just
low
want to
time,
make
but-
sure Amazon's not the only guy in town that has the button. I want to make sure that the companies that are presenting at your conference next year, there's 3 of them that also have a button that can activate the same kind of services in whatever cloud you want to activate them in.
And I would just add to that, I think there is this private-public hybrid world where guys like Alan and Zynga that wanted more control are going to do it behind their firewall, but on a cloud-like architecture, on an Amazon-style cloud or a Rackspace-style cloud, and then be able to connect out. And when they do connect out, they will be probably giving up some rights and some controls, but for a great benefit. And I think that people will make that choice. I think the key is a shift from a server virtualization-centric view of the world, where I'm adding management and self-service on top of a server-vert environment, to a true cloud-like architecture. And I think that is going to be the big trend, and the connection, the federation of how much control I have over the open on-premise versus from a service provider will be a choice that every organization just makes.
Great. All right. I'd like to thank our 3 panelists for taking my abuse for the last 20 minutes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.